Fellas?
Just a minute.
No, I asked. You gotta be authorized person now.
Oh, you gotta be the seats. Bring him to mine.
Pass that around if everybody else.
On the LTE, man.
Any guess where I'm at? No guess, right?
I don't know.
That has something to do with first grade.
1, 2, 3.
Hi there, how are you?
Linda, are we ready?
Doing fine.
Ready?
Get your snob water. You're doing it.
All right, it's 5 o'clock. Let's get started. Appreciate everybody being here. Nice crowd tonight. Thank you for coming out and being with us this evening. We call the meeting to order. We do have a quorum. We'll declare it open. This time I'll ask Councilmember Sean Tiemann if he'll lead us in the pledge and invocation.
Pledge. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you would pray with me. Our most gracious Heavenly Father, God, Lord, thank you for this day and this community, Lord. Lord, I just send prayers to our leaders in Washington, across our state, and in this local community, Lord, that you allow them to lead with your will in mind, and that you always are with us as we make decisions on behalf of the city of Sherman so that we can do your will here. We love you, Lord. In your most holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right, thank you, Councilman. So at this time, if there's anybody here to address the council on any of the agenda items, please feel free to speak now. Okay. All right, Council, we've got the consent agenda. These items are considered to be routine and will be enacted in one motion without discussion unless a council member or citizen requests a specific item be discussed and motion carries. Thank you, Council. All right, at this time, we'll open public hearing. Linda, if you'll read D1 for us, please.
Ordinance 6352, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Sherman extending the corporate limits of said city so as to annex an area of land consisting of approximately 57.88 acres generally located north of U.S. Highway 82, east of Plainview Road, and west of FM 131, adjacent to the Sherman city limits and in the City of Sherman's extraterritorial jurisdiction, on application of the landowner, providing that the owners and inhabitants of the subject area of land shall be entitled to the rights and privileges of other citizens of the City of Sherman and shall be bound by the acts and ordinances now in effect and hereinafter adopted, authorizing execution of the annexation service plan agreement, providing for a penalty for a violation of this ordinance and Sherman's general zoning ordinance, ordinance number 2280, providing a savings repealing clause, severability clause, and an effective date, and providing for the publication of the caption hereof, finding that the meeting at which this ordinance is passed was noticed and is open to the public as required by law.
Okay. Thank you, Linda. Clint?
Mayor,
Good
Council.
afternoon.
At the last council meeting, there was a schedule set for the annexation of 2 parcels of land. These parcels are within a larger development, a 430-acre development that will be discussed on down in the schedule. This first parcel is about 58 acres and is located north of 82 between Plainview Road and North Travis Street. We've attached the owner's request for annexation and the service plan agreement. Adoption of this ordinance would be the final action for annexation.
Okay. Thank you, Clint. Is there anyone here to speak on this item this evening? Okay. If not, Linda, if you'll read D2 for us, please.
Ordinance 6353, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Sherman extending the corporate limits of said city so as to annex an area of land consisting of approximately 136.94 acres, generally located north of U.S. Highway 82, east of FM 1417, and west of Plainview Road, adjacent to the Sherman city limits and in the City of Sherman's extraterritorial jurisdiction, on application of the landowner, providing that the owners and inhabitants of the subject area of land shall be entitled to the rights and privileges of other citizens of the City of Sherman, and shall be bound by the acts and ordinances now in effect and hereinafter adopted, authorizing execution of the annexation service plan agreement, providing for a penalty for a violation of this ordinance and Sherman's general zoning ordinance, ordinance number 2280, providing a savings repealing clause, severability clause, and an effective date, and providing for the publication of the caption hereof, Finding that the meeting at which this ordinance is passed was noticed and is open to the public as required by law.
Okay, thank you, Linda. Clint?
This is the second parcel of a larger development. It's 137 acres. That's north of US 82, in between Plainview Road and FM 1417. Again, we've attached the letter of request for voluntary annexation and the service plan agreement. And also, this would be the final action for annexation.
Okay, thank you, Clint. Is there anyone here to address this item this evening? Okay. If not, Linda, if you'll read D3 for us, please.
Ordinance 6354, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Sherman amending Section 6.11, subsection 5A, and Section 12, ordinance number 2280, so as to rezone property generally located in the 3500 to 4500 blocks of North FM 1417 Heritage Parkway and the 600 to 1900 blocks of West US Highway 82, being approximately 439 acres in the John Jennings Survey, abstract number 647, and the Uriah Burns Survey, abstract number 121, as a planned development district subject to this ordinance and ordinance number 2280. TPJ Properties Limited and Heritage Ranch Land Holdings Limited owners, Ryan Johnson, representative, Covenant Development developer, Norris Design, planner, landscape architect, JHP architect, and Underwood Drafting and Surveying, surveyor. Providing that the property is rezoned and placed in the zoning classification of planned development. Describing the property to be rezoned, providing a penalty not to exceed $2,000, providing a repealing savings clause, severabilities clause, and an effective date. Finding that the meeting at which this ordinance is passed was noticed and is open to the public as required by law.
Okay, thank you, Linda. Rob?
Good evening, Mayor, Council. This item is for a zone change from RA, R1, and C1 districts to a planned development district known as Heritage Ranch. City staff and our consultant Half Associates have reviewed the proposed Heritage Ranch development and provided comments. Those comments were addressed by the developer before the last P&Z meeting, of which this item was on December 15th. P&Z voted unanimously to approve this planned development. Ryan Johnson with Covenant Development is here representing this project to add further detail.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. Pleasure to be here this evening with you to talk about the Heritage Ranch development. My name is Ryan Johnson with Covenant Development. As Rob mentioned, we're based here in Sherman at 5523 West Houston Street. We're excited to present for your consideration tonight the planned development document for Heritage Ranch. Over the last year, we worked with city staff to come up with this development. More recently, as Rob mentioned, we worked with Half and Associates to develop the PD and what's before you currently. Just a little background, this PD tracks very closely to the previous PDs that were approved by council. And the reason for this is, all these PDs really track the current market demand for residential and commercial development. So you'll see a lot of similarities with this compared to the previous PDs. We feel with our background in PDs and master plan developments, along with Half's vast experience, this is an organized and concise document that meets the requirements and criteria of Sherman's new PD ordinance. That's why you'll see recommendations from Half and Associates city staff and the unanimous approval from the Planning and Zoning Commission. A quick overview of the development. It's about 440 acres. It's called a mixed-use lifestyle community. As the annexation previously mentioned, it sits on the north side of 82, basically from FM 131 to FM 1417. It's what we call a balanced and integrated community. You'll see things such as a residential region, a commercial retail region, an entertainment region, and then also an extensive parks and open space region, which I'll expound on here in a few moments. Before I do a quick overview of the highlights of the planned development, I just want to kind of give you a quick history of the vision and goals of this development as we have progressed throughout the last year or so. We've kind of taken a thoughtful and strategic approach to this development. We don't want this to just be another development, but we want this to be something that's Sherman is proud of, Sherman citizens are proud of. Being a resident for Sherman for over 25 years, I want to, there's an intention to the name Heritage Ranch. We want to leave the heritage of Sherman with that. And so, as you know, and thanks to Linda in her book, Sherman has a rich history, dating way back to the 1800s. But we also know that Sherman is a town that continues to grow and become, an epicenter for North Texas. And so our thought process was, how can we merge these two things of Sherman's history, but also Sherman's growth, and put these into a goal for the Heritage Ranch development. So as you'll see here, kind of a few of the development goals is to elevate Sherman as a unique modern version of proud Texas culture, balance the history and tradition of Sherman with its future legacy and growth, and then welcome new residents and enthusiasts from abroad seeking a classic American community with showcases its rich history and tradition. So why Heritage Ranch? Heritage Ranch will offer something new and unique to the community, and something that would attract visitors as new residents as people move into the area, but also residents as new visitors, some of the offerings within Heritage Ranch. So as we went through this, the vision of Heritage Ranch, we kind of boiled it down, taking into consideration the history, the growth of Sherman. So it's simply a classic American community with its eye on modern growth. And so how can we incorporate that into the components of Heritage Ranch? So this development, as we progress through that, it's for Sherman's future, but, what are some guiding principles of that vision as we seek to establish this, classic American community with this new modern vision? And so the three components that kind of go in this vision is, we're going to showcase Texas, host our guests, but also grow our community in a thoughtful and productive and strategic way there. So what could this place be? As we went through this, we've kind of came up with some ideas and some inspiration for this development. And so what you'll see here is in the inspiration, just some photos capturing that idea. And we like to think of this as some of the classic values of, classic town, classic values. So you'll see a lot of green space, open space, a lot of community. We think of this as a generational space where, it's something for everybody there, from, young kids to adults to grandparents as well. So you'll see this, a lot of community spaces, a lot of retail, a lot of single family, kind of bringing everything into what we call, again, the balanced and integrated community. So here's just some photos of kind of the character development to kind of give you a flavor. Again, some open spaces, some water, some quality retail development, quality housing, which is much needed for a growing community as well. So this is kind of shows you, kind of a flavor of what we're thinking aesthetically for the development. And so now about taking all this vision, taking all these goals now and putting it into, our conceptual plan that you see within the PD document. You'll see we have several different regions within the developments. The commercial or entertainment region is highlighted, or the commercial by the red. That's approximately 105 acres of developable land for commercial and retail purposes. You'll see the entertainment noted in purple there. It's another approximately 132 acres for development. And then the residential in the mid 130 acres, as well as outlined by the yellow. And then the parks and open space there in the green, that's another about 60 acres there throughout the entire development. So the residential region, a lot of the standards within the PD meet the current demands and standards that we're seeing from the home builders that are looking in this area, and it offers a mixed housing type from traditional single family, your patio homes, your town homes, and some multifamily. So a good mix of community and a good mix of housing for a growing community. And so kind of taking this layer by layer, this is an example of the open space framework that we have for Heritage Ranch. And so we're real big on having the walkability, the connectivity, the green space. And so our goal is to have some interconnected green space, not only within the development, but not only looking at the Heritage Ranch development ourselves, but looking at developments outside of Heritage Ranch and bringing that connectivity, that walkability with hiking and biking trails there. And, I think on the agenda later tonight, there's another development just to the north of us with Astoria Homes. And so we've worked with them to figure out, how can we integrate this whole, Northwest Sherman into something special, not just Heritage Ranch, but the surrounding developments as well. And so this is a depiction of the open space framework that you'll see to provide, plenty of again, hiking trails, biking trails, but community events. This is just kind of some amenities for the open space. We've talked about, we think it promotes an active lifestyle, which is very beneficial these days, again, with the walking trails, the biking trails, plenty of parks and play areas, activity areas, picnic areas, and dog parks as well. This is a transportation master plan that we're outlining here, and this is the high-level transportation plan. As you'll see, there's contemplated improvements to Plainview Road from the north-south corridor there. The other important feature on this transportation master plan is creating an east-west connectivity from FM 1417 to FM 131. And then we'll have, some key thoroughfares coming off 1417 and the access roads for 82. So this depicts kind of the key roadways. There'll also obviously be some internal roadways as the subdivision, different things develop. But I just wanted to highlight that, there would be some contemplated improvements to Plainview and then some getting a good east-west connectivity there with FM 131 and Plainview, or FM 131 and 1417. So again, taking all these layers from all these different regions, the park and open space, the transportation, just highlighting how all these kind of come together, as puzzle pieces, we like to call it, in the balance and the integrated community there to really what we think is going to be a showcase development for Sherman, for everybody to be proud of and its citizens, and we're proud to put our name on this development. And so all this seems like a great plan, and I'm sure most of you think, what's the timing of this? We're not just a developer that's here, putting paper down and having to do this in the future at some point. Our timing is now. We've got immediate need for this. This project continues to gain momentum. It's gained a lot of momentum over the last several months. So this is something we're actively working on. We're not just getting the zoning change and putting it on the shelf for future growth. It's actually now. So we're actively, just kind of give you a sense of what we're doing now. We're actively working with civil engineers on grading and the infrastructure layout for the entire development. The residential region is currently under designed, and if the design continues to progress as it is, we're looking at probably a Q4 of this year construction start on the residential region. We have many national home builders seeking opportunities within Heritage Ranch. Construction of key infrastructure. This is kind of the plain view and some of the major water, sewer lines from the roadways. Looking at starting that later this year as well. And then we're in active discussions with several commercial users that would also serve as an anchor to Heritage Ranch there. So things are really picking up. Over the next few months, you'll see some continued clearing, some flow line relocation within the development, and then also the continued development of plans there. So thank you for your consideration of the Heritage Ranch PD tonight. Again, based on House recommendation, city staff, we're asking for your approval of the PD. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thanks, Ryan.
Okay. So is there anybody else here to speak about this item? Okay. If not, we'll close public hearing and consider the adoption of ordinances. Council. Questions tonight? Discussions?
Nothing on the side.
Mr. Mayor, if there's no questions or discussion, I move to approve 6352, 6353, and 6354 as written.
I'll second that.
Okay. Motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Council. All right, Linda, if you'll read E1 for us, please.
Resolution 6693, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Sherman authorizing execution of a development agreement with Wildwood Homes LLC for the construction of public facilities in Washington Meadows, Phase 1, a 15.983-acre development east of Heritage Parkway, FM 1417, and south of Washington Street in the City of Sherman, finding that the meeting at which this resolution is passed was noticed and is open to the public as required by law.
Okay. Thank you, Linda. Wayne, good evening.
Evening, Mayor, Council. As Linda read off, this is agreement with Wildwood Homes for construction of Washington Meadows Phase 1, about 16 acres, 57 residential lots. The developer will be constructing nearly 4,000 feet of streets, water, and sewer in this development, about 1,300 feet of storm sewer to be installed as well. Is all per city standards, and will be dedicated to the City of Sherman, and this will be done with all their funds. So.
Okay. Thank you, Wayne. Council, any questions on this item?
Move to approve resolution 6693.
Okay.
Second.
Motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, council. All right, Linda, if you'll read E2 for us, please.
Resolution 6694, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Sherman authorizing execution of a development agreement with Astoria Homes LLC for the construction of public facilities in Austin Landing, Phase 4, a 40.84-acre development west of North Travis Street and south of Kreger Road in the City of Sherman. Finding that the meeting at which this resolution is passed was noticed and is open to the public as required by law.
Thank you, Linda. Wayne?
Yes, another residential development agreement with Astoria Homes for the fourth phase of Austin Landing subdivision, about 41 acres, 135 residential lots with this project, about 5,700 feet of streets, water, sewer going in with this, about 5,300 feet of storm sewer, all installed per city standards to be dedicated to us. Again, developer is putting all this in at their cost.
Okay. Thank you, Wayne. Council, any questions on this one?
How much sewer was on that one?
Close to 5,700 feet of sanitary sewer.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve.
Okay.
I'll second.
Motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Linda, if you'll read E3 for us, please.
Resolution 6695, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Sherman authorizing execution of a project development agreement, a PDA, with Johnson Controls Incorporated via TIPS number 170103 for development of an energy savings performance contract project. Finding that the meeting at which this resolution is passed was noticed and is open to the public as required by law.
Thank you, Linda. Mary?
Hi, good evening. Johnson Controls approached the city last year about developing a program to provide the city with energy and operational savings under Local Government Code, Chapter 302. Local Government Code 302 permits the city to enter into an energy savings performance contract, and that guarantees savings that will meet or exceed the city's obligations related to the project costs. So Johnson Controls, or JCI, evaluated the city's facilities just on a kind of a 30,000 foot level. They met with staff and they determined that a project such as this was feasible, meaning that the energy and operational savings will be enough to pay for the debt service. So this agenda item is for JCI to prepare a detailed project plan. However, it does not obligate us to implement the plan. The final plan will be brought back to the council for approval. So if the city decides to move forward with the plan, the cost of the detailed plan is just rolled up into the implementation cost. If we decide that we don't want to implement the detailed plan, we do have to pay for that detailed plan because it is quite a bit of work, and we do have a finished report for that. So tonight we have Terrence Watts with JCI and some of his crew here. They're going to tell you a little bit more about the project.
Yep, okay.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening also remaining members of the council. My name is Terrence Watts. I'm with Johnson Control. My counterpart is Mr. Roger Roach, and we have our regional leadership, Mr. Zach Christensen, and our development engineer here, Mr. Jim Notman. So we'll be super brief, cognizant of your time. But we are extremely excited for the opportunity to work with the city of Sherman. I grew up in Denton. I frequented Sherman a lot. We hung out in the areas of Denison and Sherman, and going to the Lake Texoma is something that's familiar to me. And so I'm impressed with the amount of development and growth that is happening currently in Sherman. The reason I work in the role that I work in is because I get the opportunity to help cities like Sherman not have the burden of taxpayers having to update the infrastructure that's needed to run your buildings and run your facilities. So what we're talking about here is a continued step along the path that Sherman is already taking to be resilient as a community.
Our team actually works together in the alignment of the vision set forth by the council and the leadership to address the infrastructure, the aged infrastructure within the city. And we're really looking to do that in a way with little to no impact to your budget. And the way that we do that is we identify aged equipment and systems within your facilities and look to upgrade those systems for new equipment and new technology. And what that does, it creates reduced operational costs in addition to budget predictability. Now, although Johnson Controls is a manufacturer of these type of systems, the solution is brand agnostic. So what it does, it gives the city the power to choose the type of system and branding the system that you have in your facility. Now, Johnson Controls has been doing these type of projects for over 30 years, and the project that we are presenting is a turnkey solution with one contract. So essentially, Johnson Controls is acting as the general contractor for this particular project, which allows for the city not to have to deal with multiple vendors. And so what we're presenting is providing a fixed cost project, and we're carrying all the risk and all the cost of any change orders, in addition to guaranteeing those savings. So another very valuable thing that we have in Johnson Controls is, along with the breadth of offerings and the resources that we have, is our local presence. Our local presence is very important because this allows us the ability to respond quickly. We all know that projects very rarely go without a hiccup, but when they do, it's very vital that we can respond and respond quickly. Our local presence allows us to do that. We have several branches within the Dallas-Fort Worth area. One of our main branches is actually less than an hour away. In addition to that, our local management team is here local as well. So it allows us to deploy quickly for any of your needs.
Thank you, Ryan. So, project development agreement, as Mary pointed out, we identified very high level, about 10,000 or 30,000 foot view, that there are potential vulnerabilities that could end up costing the city money. And what we identified is roughly $1.5 to $2 million in critical needs. The way we did that is through looking at your utilities and your current operational spend, and we were able to calculate that by replacing the aged infrastructure with new technology and new equipment, your utility savings could go down between $70,000 to $80,000 per year. And then we also calculate operation and maintenance savings. That comes in the form of the city's currently spending between $20,000 and $30,000 a year on break fixes. When the chiller breaks down or mechanical equipment breaks down, you're having to call service providers, and they're coming out and having to fix those items. Well, you will have those costs avoided because you'll have new equipment installed. The project development agreement allows us to collaboratively come together and work with Mike and Mary and Mr. Steele and the team to develop the scope to replace the critical needs within the city, the critical equipment, and the equipment that's at its end of useful life. So by the council moving forward this evening, it gives us permission to go into the high-level investment grade audit that Mary mentioned. As Roderick mentioned, you'll have a fixed firm price at the end of that opportunity, and will guarantee the savings by statute 302. And if needed, the city has the opportunity to work with us to help with financing of this matter, but it's completely up to you. Mary also has stated that the city has a lot of things under control with respect to that. Where we are currently is discussing the project opportunity, the project PDA, let me just say that. We're discussing the project development agreement with the city giving the graces to move forward to the IGA, which is the investment grade audit. The next step would be, once we are engaged in that audit, it's roughly 90 to 120 days where our engineering team will come out and spend time and evaluate each individual piece of equipment that needs to be addressed that Mike and the team with facilities states that is a critical needs. After that is presented back to the city, and if the city chooses to move forward, we'll go into an implementation process, which we believe should take between 9 months and 12 months to execute and commission and install new equipment. And then the city will have the comfort of knowing over the next 15 years, the equipment that was installed, we take on the risk transfer of having any aged infrastructure problems or any issues. We've covered the onus on Johnson Control. And then lastly, all things hold true. We move forward. We believe that by May, we will be able to mobilize and begin the process, and by the middle of next summer, be completely executed and turn everything over to the facilities team with new infrastructure and new technology. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Council, for the opportunity to present. We'll open up to any questions.
All right, Council, y'all have any questions?
I
I've
have
got
several.
one. Go ahead. Please.
Yeah, I'm with him. I don't understand it, but what I do understand is you are a company who would come in and tell us things that are wrong that need to be replaced. That's your business, is to replace those. So you're going to find things that may or may not need to be replaced. I'm not saying that you're not that type of person, but sitting here, that's what I would be thinking. Because that is your job, to sell us the equipment. So you're going to replace something before it's broken. Am I understanding correctly?
What happened is the city, when we met with Mike engaged with us from the facilities and said, we're spending money on this chiller. We're spending money on aged infrastructure. And each individual piece of equipment at your facility, at your city, has an end of useful life.
Right.
The majority of your equipment has reached its end of useful life, which is about 15 to 18 years.
Okay, and so I want to stop you there.
Yes,
so you're saying 15 to 18 years, and your slide was saying that you'll be here for 15 years once you get this done, right? So about the time y'all leave is about the time we need something else.
Absolutely. So regardless if Johnson Controls was here or not, the city's going to have aged infrastructure 15 years from 2021 that you will have to plan and replace that equipment regardless. The onus is on Johnson Controls in this type of program to guarantee that the savings pays for the equipment. If you, as a council, said no, fine, then the council would either have to pay for that aged infrastructure out of a different fund or issue COs, and the taxpayers would be burdened with having to pay for that equipment replacement.
But we're having to pay you all. So there's a fee there. And I know you're saying you can save us that amount. So you're saying even across the board or more savings.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the last part. What were you saying?
When you're looking at the infrastructure and you're going out and doing it, you're saying the city can save the even across the board or more.
Yes, the city, Johnson Controls will guarantee the amount of the savings, which covers the debt service.
Right. So we're going to do this ahead of time before anything breaks. We're going to go ahead and spend this kind of money for 15 years, or we can take a chance with the city and take care of problems as they come up.
That formula is what the city has done. And when we looked at the financials over the last 5 years and 10 years, the city actually is spending more. One of the issues that we've been able to uncover is that your utility usage goes down. Whereas in the formula that you're referring to, you don't have the benefit of the utility usage going down. So if you wait to 2021, 2022, whatever year we want to throw out the formula, you're still going to have increased utility costs, and you're still going to have aging infrastructure. So when you have to replace those things or do the break fixes, your costs are accelerating. As Mr. Rhodes pointed out, we're giving you budget predictability for the next 15 years with new technology and guaranteeing the debt service, meaning the savings covers the debt service.
Okay.
What exactly are they asking us to commit to tonight?
May I speak on that? Sure. What we're asking the council to consider is give Johnson Controls the authority by permitting us to move forward with the project development agreement to go into the investment grade audit. So that way it's no ambiguity. We know exactly down to the kilowatt usage what your savings will be, and down to the penny what that calculation looks like. Today we've done a high level, through the last 6 months, we've engaged with Mr. Steele and Mary and the rest of the team and done a high level feasibility study on our risk threshold. So there's been no cost passed to the city. What we're asking is to go granular so that we can develop collaboratively a solution for the city so that you're not surprised when you have to replace a chiller for $350,000 or $200,000 or whatever the price may be.
What is the fee if you do all this and we decide we don't want to do this?
What we have in the project development agreement is $50,000 to be reimbursed to Johnson Controls for our engineering hours if you all decide to not move forward after we develop a project.
And if I understand it correctly, what you said earlier is we could choose to go with any brand of equipment that we wanted to. Didn't have to necessarily be your brand. And also, if I read this correctly, this project is slated currently, the way it's written in our agenda, to be paid for out of a lease-to-own agreement where the city actually doesn't bond or take out any money to do any of this equipment upgrades. You guys carry the debt, and you carry the debt out of the savings that you would generate for us.
The first answer to your question is yes, we're brand agnostic. You can work with any carrier, any manufacturer. We have relationships with multiple vendors. So the city gets to choose. We like Trane, we like Carrier, we like Yorks, which we're York. It's completely up to the city to decide. At no point are we telling the city what they're going to put into their facilities. And then the second part of it is the way it's procured as the financing vehicle is through a TELC. Very similar to when the city buys a copier or other type of equipment. Johnson Controls, by statute 302, confirms that we have to cover the amount of savings, which will cover the amount of the debt service. So when you have the debt service due, your savings calculates to balance out, equal out that debt service when the payment comes due. We also have, through statute 302 that we're going through, a performance bond is issued against our organization for the benefit of the city. So the risk threshold is taken away. Did I answer that?
Yeah, I was just curious. What it says lease purchase in here. That's what I was trying to nail down. Is this a lease purchase of the equipment with you guys?
No, you will own the equipment. The financing vehicle is called a tax-exempt lease purchase, or a TELC.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
What other communities are you involved with?
Several. Thinking just from a drive distance, the city of Fort Worth would be the closest. We just recently procured with the city of Wiley, I believe was $9 million. We've done 6 phases with the city of Fort Worth over the last 12 years for $80 million.
And how much of your projects generally, what percentage of the equipment needs are you finding are just LED lights?
Oh, LED lights at one point was a really big deal when it came to new technology 10 or 15 years ago. What we're truly talking about is integrating the city with a solution that is building automated. It's not just about lights going off or lights being fluorescent to LED. Now it's having controls, because when you look at diluting your cost, it comes in the form of energy management system. So when we were interviewing Mike and the team, one of the issues he said is someone may be in another building and they like it cool, and then someone down the hallway likes it hot, and there's no way to have any regulatory way to do that without spending man hours getting in the truck, running, doing this, turning something on, turning something off. We're giving the city the ability to have efficiencies through technology. And by doing that, your consumption is the same, but your cost goes down based off of having equipment that is more sustainable. Lighting is a big part of it. We also looked at water, but the city did a great job by already preparing to replace smart meters within the city. But HVAC, mechanical, and controls, we have identified the city has some critical needs and some vulnerabilities. So we're trying to prepare you in advance to not have to deal with those costs.
Could you name some of those?
The
critical.
The biggest one is the chiller. In our process, and forgive me if I speak out of turn, Robbie, we identified, I believe in August, that there was a change order or a request for somewhere around $30,000 for a service charge that was unexpected to replace some items in the chiller. The chiller is roughly about 24 years old. The end of useful life for a chiller is roughly 20 years. Specific to this building, this chiller runs continuously for the restrooms that are upstairs. And Jim, I won't go too much on it, but what we identified is there should be a more efficient system in the form of packaged units that just control. Those are split units just controlling the bathrooms, which takes the heavy load off of the chiller because it's consistently running. Well, once we do those types of items, that will lower the utility usage and lower the cost. So which goes back to your point of order of efficiencies. We're not just pointing out things are broken, we're just gonna throw in there and fix it and leave. No, we're actually creating a more sustainable solution for your city.
And just out of curiosity, if we do this $50,000 look period and we choose not to go with you guys, I mean, the report that y'all submitted to us, I'm assuming stays with us. I mean, that's ours to have and hold.
Absolutely, yes, sir. When we do the investment grade audit, moving past the PDA, you have that information for yourself. That's completely yours. You've got it. And I believe we communicated back and forth on different payment terms in the event that the $50,000 has to be paid to Johnson Controls. And let me say, our goal is not to make $50,000. Our goal is to leave the city with a sustainable, resilient opportunity to have refreshed technology installed and give you a better comprehensive solution to be prepared as you're growing in every other way, so that this isn't something that burdens you, that you have to replace these things as they break. There's a difference in being proactive and reactive. You've been proactive all the way.
So,
yes, sir.
Terrence, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you're talking about introducing splits on this building?
I'll defer to our engineering team. If Jim, you can go into that a little bit.
And bear with me. This is, again, our field work has been very preliminary at this point. Now, our understanding that this building specifically, this space plus the space above, are conditioned by the air-cooled chiller that sits outside the building. There's 2 bathrooms that also are fed off of that system that are primarily used by the offices. The offices have, and I apologize, I don't remember if it's split systems or rooftop use for the offices back behind us here. That chiller has to run to keep those 2 bathrooms at comfortable conditions, as well as maintaining these spaces. If those bathrooms had their own little split systems, just those bathrooms, it alleviates the chiller from having to keep these spaces, this big space and the one above us, operating, and we could control it in a more efficient manner. It's mainly just pulling off those 2 little spaces. So it's not turning the rest of this entire building into a bunch of split systems. It's a very minor modification.
Okay. Where would you hide the compressor?
I don't know that yet, sir.
So, just so I've got my mind around this. Basically, our equipment is so old and costs so much to maintain and is so energy inefficient. Johnson Controls says we can make you more efficient and upgrade your system so you're not paying for all these repairs. And it will be a cost wash for the city in the long run. And we will end up with newer equipment, more efficient equipment. And is that basically?
In a nutshell, yes.
Okay.
You'll have newer equipment, and the cost will be, the savings guarantee the debt service.
And the savings guarantee the debt service, and that's part of our contract with you guys?
Yes, sir, it would be part of the contract.
Now, is this a lighting control program situation, or is this a temperature control system, a backnet? Is that what this is?
At this point, it's basically, the answer is yes. It has the potential to be that. I mean, what we're going to come to you and your staff with is not a thou shalt type of project. We will come to you with basically a menu of options and say, how much of this do you want to do, whether it's from a technology standpoint or from a financial standpoint, and carrying with all of that the guarantees that go along with it, the price and savings guarantee. So at this point, there is no, I'm not going to tell you I'm going to come back to you with anything in particular. All of those and more different things will be looked at.
And just out of curiosity, I'm kind of curious, is there a plan that y'all put together that says, okay, we know some of this is going to come through savings and efficiencies with lighting or ACs or things of that nature. But is there a formula where you go, well, as long as this chiller is still chilling and it's still going, we're not replacing this chiller until it dies. And then when it dies, we replace the chiller so that we're not going, hey, paying you guys to come tell us that we need to replace all of our stuff now, you know.
I just want to answer that real quick. High level, it's not all of your stuff. So I don't want you to think that everything is totally wrong.
I just mean anything that's wrong. I mean,
Yeah.
anything that's less efficient, you
Well,
know.
it's got to pay for itself in energy savings, so.
As a collective
If we're
group.
paying, $10,000 a year to run the chiller and they can replace it over the 15-year contract earlier, I think the plan wouldn't be to wait for something to break that's super inefficient. You want to replace it now, so you have the savings and efficiency to help pay for it.
Yeah, I understand that. I was just, you know, at the cost of $1.5 million of infrastructure versus $2 million of infrastructure.
Well, I mean, if it's a net zero to us and they guarantee it's a net zero to us, then the more infrastructure we get, the better.
I understand. I'm just saying the net zero is also a different, the difference between zero and having some extra money in our pocket. There's a difference there. To be a break even or money in our pocket is my point, you know?
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
And just so you know, everything you're talking to is a parameter that when we sit down with you with the final project recommendations, that has already been discussed and added into it. And so, I mean, not that I don't want to, put words in your mouth, but if you said, I want to have $100 extra every month, or I want to have $5,000 extra every month, we put that into the equation so that it can satisfy.
And I was just curious if that was part of the equation, so I guess that's answering my question.
Absolutely.
I guess my question is to staff, do we have our HVAC equipment and other equipment on a replacement cycle, do we not?
Budgeted?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
To some degree, yes, but there's not, to my knowledge, Terrence or Mary, there's not hey, this unit is such and such old. It is going to be replaced in June of 2023, something like that. We do have an inventory of our units and our equipment and furnishings and all that. And then how we have done it is, hey, is it broken? Is it not working? Is it, we haven't taken an energy and maintenance look at it like these guys do from that standpoint to say it needs to be replaced. The second thing I'd like to just reiterate is their guarantee isn't like McDonald's. I shouldn't say names. We guarantee your satisfaction, whatever. They literally, if the savings don't equate to the costs of this replacement over a certain year period, they're writing us checks annually to make up the difference.
That is correct.
And that has happened. I mean, he's not gonna tell you that never happens, right? That has happened and does happen. And kind of to Josh's point, what we're putting on the line here today is, do you have the authority to go spend another 2 or 3 or however many months to come up with a detailed plan? There'll be another decision point, and that after that 2 or 3 months to say, okay, here's the list, here's the granular details, here's the cost, here's the projected savings, and then we sign off, yes or no, we're good with the projected savings, and then we move on with this guarantee, or we decide not to use them, in which case we wouldn't have a guarantee, but we would have this detailed list of improvements, replacements, all that too.
Okay, so we have this building, which, has the chiller and some things of that nature, but our other facilities, maybe Central Fire, what are the facilities that we have? Because we're in a replacement mode with many of these. We built the new fire station.
Yeah.
Most of our, we're contemplating building another new building tonight.
Yeah.
We're constantly improving. So I'm wondering,
So I think, and I asked that question today as well in staff meeting, it's easier to say what buildings would it not involve, right? We just rebuilt the library. It's not going to involve the library. We just rebuilt built Station 4. It's not going to involve Station 4. It will involve this building. It will involve municipal building. It will involve all of the fire stations except for Station 4 and any other. They're also not going to look, I don't believe, at very low impact buildings. We have a building over on East Street, the Music Street building, that's about, 400 square feet or something. there's not enough kind of meat on the bone there to take a look at for them to even evaluate. So I think I've identified some of the buildings that we will look at. I've identified some of the buildings we will not look at. And I mean, if you guys want a detailed list, I don't know do you have a detailed list with you of the specific buildings that we will look at or no?
I mean, I've got a list of facilities, and that's part of, would be our kickoff meeting, would do exactly what you're saying, is to go through that list and go, and we've already recognized, like you said, about the library and Station 4 and anything new, and in all honesty, I think to your point, is even if it's an old building and it's got a 3-year-old air conditioner on it, we're not going to recommend to replace that. That doesn't make any sense. It's the older systems, that you're looking at specifically to the air conditioning. So that is a detail, that we go through with you. I mean, that's the first part of this process, is just to go through that list and go, what do you want us to look at? What don't you want us to look at? And to go to your point of if you're going to plan on, if you're really going to rip a building down in 5 years, we're probably not going to want to look at it. The other side of that is we've all sat with cities and counties and colleges that said in 5 years we're going to replace a building, and 15 years from now they're still talking about replacing that building in 5 years. So, but we work with you on that. That is a back and forth decision. It's your decision ultimately, is where it amounts to.
So what would the situation be if we determined as a city that your solution is not acceptable?
It's cost us. At this point, you would have never had the opportunity.
No, I meant on individual buildings in the equipment.
Oh, individual buildings.
Yeah, not overall, just like if we have a historical building, which, is a possibility, and we don't want a bunch of split compressors sitting around it, and we say, no way.
Then we leave the building alone.
Okay.
Yeah, the city has full control on which choice of buildings we select.
But then does that give you the opportunity to come back and say, well, you owe us?
No, at the end of the day, there's no $50,000 invoice being presented to the city, assuming the city moves forward with a project. If the project scope goes down to 1.1 million or goes up to 3 million, whatever range happens, that's what the investment grade audit gives us the opportunity to collaboratively put together. It could be $800,000 by the time that we finish this out. So at no point is the city going to receive an invoice unless we don't develop a project together. Excluding buildings is part of that process.
So
and excluding equipment.
Let me ask one more question.
Yes, sir.
Too. I'll just speak loud. So we talked about the financing being either through Johnson Controls, and there is some implicit interest rate there, or we could do it through debt on our own if we chose to do that when the time comes. If we choose to do these improvements just with cash, how does that work? I'm guessing there's still some imputed sort of interest rate, and whatever the financing would have cost is what you guys guarantee?
I'll defer to Zach on that one. But the financing, and Zach answered too, it's not Johnson Controls, and it's financing that. Zach.
Sure. But regardless of who we're writing the check to, we can either write a check to whoever you use as a financing arm. We can write a check through, if we did tax notes or if we did a CO to do it, we're writing it to the bondholders. Or depending on the size of the project, we say, oh no, we've got $1.1 million laying around, right, Mary? Yeah. And we say, hey, we're not issuing debt at all for it. We're just paying for it with cash. But the guarantee is still split up over some period of time, right? Over this 15 years or whatever. And is there an interest rate that gets imputed in that? Because if we issue debt, it's going to be whatever, 2%, 1, 2, 3%. Yes. Through you guys, it's probably more than that.
Yes.
But we could choose option C, which is just with cash. And how is that handled in regards to your guarantee?
Well, it would be using an imputed rate that we would agree on with you guys and Mary. I'll be honest, that doesn't happen that much because this allows you to keep that cash and do something else with it.
Yeah, I got it.
So we rarely see that, just to be quite honest with you. But if you wanted to do it that way, we would work it out.
Okay.
Work it out, meaning you put some interest in it somewhere.
I don't
Well, they
really
just, yeah,
Yeah.
that would just be a negotiation
It'd be a
of,
negotiation, yeah.
of what the rate would be.
I don't really see how that would serve you guys that well, honestly. To put some kind of dummy interest rate in there and go with it. But we would work with you on that. To be completely honest with you, like the vendor neutrality thing, we don't typically get deeply involved with the finance piece. That's something that you guys do all the time, and so we step out of the way.
But the guarantee is over some period of time, not day one.
Correct.
I mean, it's got to be over some period of time or the model doesn't work.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's right. The 302 statute allows up to 20 years for Texas cities. We generally like to keep it at 15 years because that marries up really well with the expected life of the assets. Just makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And Robbie, I hadn't really heard your opinion on this, and I'm curious.
Yeah.
Just if we look at the one decision of $50,000 being, I know that's not what your plan is, but that's the cost no matter what happens.
Yeah.
Is that something you think is worth the look?
So here's 2 or 3 things, and we looked at this years ago. I did pre-Mary, 15, 20 years ago. And it was just, for me at the time, it was, man, I don't want to mess with this. Let's just pass on it and move on. And these guys may not have even been here at the time. And so Mary came back, Terrence came back with it, Mike Grant, looked at it again. And here's the things I believe. I'm not trying to sell it for them. I'm just telling you my perspective since you asked. 2 or 3 things that we get from it. Could we, as a staff, do we have the expertise as a staff, or could we get the expertise to do the job that they do? Perhaps, right? I mean, we're not energy experts. We could maybe find some way to calculate how many kilowatt hours we would save and go through a rate and whatnot. So could we could we get the expertise to do this? Possibly, but that's not our wheelhouse, and that would take staff time and away from the things that we're already doing. So what we get, number one, is they are experts in it, and they can do it much more efficiently than we can and come up with this plan to give us a roadmap. There's some value to that. Number 2 is that so long as we're using them, we get a guarantee. If we do, if Mary and I and her staff crunch the numbers, we could come up with an estimate of savings. There's no guarantee that we get savings. If we replace a chiller, we're going to have a cost savings. We know that. We don't know how much. They can calculate how much, and they're guaranteeing it, right? So there's no second thing we get is we get a guarantee because they're probably not going to recommend a project that's not going to pay for itself, I'm guessing. There may be a one-off of that, but in total, the sum of the cost of the project over time is going to be less than the savings over time, even with this whatever fee built into it.
But if it's not, they're on the hook.
Well, if it's not, they're literally writing us a check to make up the difference annually. And so
I'm not seeing the downside.
So we get that. And then the third thing is just not messing with it. Us not having to, there's some value in staff time, not just with the calculation and going through this detailed analysis, but just the actual project management of it and, that aspect of it we avoid. So there's benefit to the city in this.
What did we spend last year, either Robbie or Mary, on our energy costs, just so we can have a clear picture of what's going out the door now?
I don't know.
We know that.
Yeah.
He does not have that.
Well, here's what I will say overall, but it's out of the scope of some of the things they're not going to look at. They're not going to look at our water and wastewater plant usage, but our total spend on electric utilities used to be over $2 million a year. But a lot of that is the plants because they're power hungry. Yeah. But I'm just saying we spend millions a year on electricity. And so there's some chunk of that number. I don't know what percentage of that, but some chunk of it.
We usually find, as a rule of thumb, about 20% savings, so using that metric and reverse engineering it, probably $1.5 million based on what we're looking at here. That seems to make sense.
Okay.
So how does this affect our new water treatment plant, the new portion?
Yeah, I mean, I'm guessing they're certainly not going to look at our processes, and I'm guessing because our new plant is probably built with LED lighting and some of these motion sensors and stuff, they're probably not going to look at the interior building of the new building.
No, that is correct. We had a conversation with Clint, and we decided to exclude that completely because of the efficiency with it.
Correct.
It was my understanding, you said earlier that if we allow you to do this whole thing and you replace some of the things that are expected to go bad, if they break, you said you'd come take care of it, right?
Yes.
Did I understand that?
That's correct.
And you said you had local, and that's Denton and Fort Worth.
I'm from Denton, but our office is in Irving, but yes, we have.
Okay, well, I was just curious as to how long, I mean, because like if the air conditioning went out in this building, we don't want to wait a day or two, or what, and so I'm just asking how quickly, do you usually respond and can get on to something like that?
Yeah.
As opposed to using local people?
Yeah.
No, it's a great question.
Go ahead, Terrence.
Yes. So in the process of the investment grade audit, before we go to contract, we put together a communication plan and we put together SOPs. So standard operating procedure of what we need to do for critical event, what's our truck roll time, how long, what's considered critical. We also have the opportunity to present what we call a PSA, kind of above that. Those are things that we'll go through with everyone on critical needs and what's our time allotment and what's the cost for that and when we have to show up and all those things. And so we have the opportunity to develop that. It's outside of the implementation agreement.
Okay, that's fine.
But we have those in place, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And we can provide samples from other cities.
But there's people that do this in the retail world that go around the retailers and do something very similar. And historically what I've seen is their numbers for projects are always astronomically higher than what you would spend on it if you did it yourself. My question is, once you submit us the itemized list, I guess you're gonna have it all broke down, what each project's gonna cost, so we can make sure that we're paying fair market value for those type of things.
Absolutely.
So it's like a menu for you guys so that you can kind of pick and choose what you want this project to look like, what effect that has on the cash flow and the payback and so on and so forth. Yes, sir.
I have a question. Say we have some of the parts laying around that we thought would fix it, and it just never happened. We have the parts. Mm-hmm. What we called it a long time ago, it's called step zero. But you have parts laying around that you thought would fit, that may go out, that you would have laying around. Is there a buyback process or something that you guys can have, or we can set up, or be able to sell those pieces that are laying around and maybe outdated and somebody else could use those? Or is that asking?
We wouldn't do that, no, just to be frank.
Because see, some of those parts may be still good to other people,
Yeah.
so, and a lot of companies do that. They'll sell you extra to go with it just in case it goes out, and then we change over to a new system, and then we're kind of stuck with those parts. So I was just wondering if there was a way, there was like a buyback process or something like that.
If it was,
Or maybe another company that you
if
could
it
have.
was JCI branded stuff, that might make it easier, but
Gotcha.
since, we're contemplating using any other brands, it wouldn't, no, sir.
Okay. Now, the other part of it is we're spending the $50,000 and we're Xing out buildings that we don't need to use because they're newer, or you guys to go in and check out. To take them off, we still need to start to gain a usage history on the pieces that we already have.
Yes, sir.
So if we say, no, let's don't use, or you guys don't go in and do inventory or check out the process in this newer building, eventually we're still gonna need that usage history set up. Would that still be within the $50,000? Even though we're checking them off saying, don't check this one, but could we still get it checked and then?
Oh, yeah, certainly. So, you're talking about a building that we may look at and then ultimately remove.
Or one that we may have checked off and say, hey, it's newer, you don't have to check that one out. Would we, to check it off is not gonna be any cheaper.
Right. Well, think of it this way, it can go down like that, or if you guys just decide to start adding more buildings, we're not gonna increase that 50,000 either. Does that
Right.
make sense? So
Right.
we'll keep it there in kind of good faith.
Right.
And go on about, the business that you want us to go about.
So are you really asking, hey, can we get a comprehensive list by building, for instance, tracking what our usage is, maintenance and, but maybe more so utilities? So we get this comprehensive list. Now, of that list of 50 buildings, we're only going to look at 23 of them. I'm just making up numbers. I don't know what, but can you guys provide for us, not a list of what needs to be replaced, but just usage by building so that we can track this over time?
Yeah, the easy way to do that is just to see all your bills from those buildings, even
Right.
the ones that we don't expect to get in, like your fire station.
Right.
That's a relatively easy analysis. for
Okay.
us. Yeah.
So all you'd have to do is write down when if it's a newer building, just write, okay, this is the usage, this is what the building.
So just include, he's just asking, can you include that as part of your report back to us is,
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you for clarifying.
So, just sitting here thinking of our facilities, we're gonna do 4 fire stations, Kid Key, City Hall, and the current police station?
Yes.
missing
I mean, we have Glenny O'Ham, we have the Parks and Rec building, we have the Taylor Street Gym, we have, I mean,
Yeah, I mean, what do we have, like?
solid waste building
20-something
on
buildings?
Southeast.
Okay.
I have to imagine this counts all of our lighting in parks and things of that nature as well.
Oh, yeah, they will look at lighting in the parks as well.
That's what we were going to point out. It includes the lighting in the parks.
Yeah.
And we have a list that was provided in attachment 1 of all the buildings that we've just discussed. That doesn't mean that we can't add to it or retract from it.
So the parks that we have lit, we've got Binkley is older. I'm thinking the older ones.
Yeah, Fairview,
Pecan Grove.
Old Settlers Park.
Cherry.
Does
Yeah.
Old Settlers Park have old lights? I thought we relit Old Settlers.
I can't imagine we would have done every single light at Old Settlers Park.
If only we had some sort of study.
Yeah.
Well, what I'm trying to do is establish the $50,000 as a fair price for what we're asking them to do.
And I have one last question for you, and then I'm done asking questions. But if we add a building, obviously electricity bills go up. So are y'all individually metering all of our items so that you know that what you're charging us is set in stone? You've got those metered?
That's a great question. The protocols that we use, ASHRAE protocols that we use to verify and measure, the effect that we've had on those buildings, can either use that, or it can go straight to the utility bills, or it can isolate just the things that we changed in the building and count the wattage, count the BTUs, things like that. So, please go ahead.
I apologize.
Well, that's all actually up for discussion. Once we put the contract in front of you, how would you like us best to measure these buildings? Absolutely.
And one other caveat I like to add to that, just to keep everything.
All right. So, council, any other questions?
It seems, Mr. Mayor, that we all would kind of like to see a list of all the buildings.
There is a list of the buildings, and I stopped counting at 42.
Because I interrupted.
Okay.
So-
Do they raise to the level of being evaluated? Because somebody made the comment, well, we're not gonna, if they're smaller, we're not gonna evaluate them.
Yeah, so the ones that they have, I'm assuming the ones that are struck out are not going to be evaluated.
Correct.
And the ones that are not struck out are going to be evaluated?
At least.
Okay. I mean, I can name them off here if you want, but the things that are not are, they're in the
list.
Yeah. I mean, if I had to estimate without counting every single one of them, there's 50, call it 50 buildings.
Okay.
And one other thing I'd like to add really quick is when we get through the process, as Zach mentioned, measurement verification, there is a third-party engineer that verifies all of the savings, the kilowatt usage, and the guarantee that is not an employee of Johnson Controls. This does not represent the city of Sherman. They are a completely separate entity that makes sure that everything that we are saying is guaranteed and correct. So there's a separate engineer involved in the process before we finalize the process. And that keeps everything above board. So I just wanted to give you that comfort of knowing that as well, that there's a third-party engineer that looks at everything that we
Who
present.
hires them?
You do. We don't even make a recommendation. We give you a list of 50 in the state of Texas, and you go pick them.
Okay.
Maybe not 50, that was exaggerated.
All right, council, any more questions?
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve.
Okay. Second, okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries,
Who
thank
was
you.
the second, please? Thank you.
Thank you, guys, appreciate you. All right, at this time, we'll receive presentation from Police Chief Zachary Flores and Hydell Associates Architect Aaron Babcock on initial concept for the Sherman Police Department headquarters.
Aaron, we're warmed up.
We're warmed up and ready.
Facilities in your head?
That's right.
Hope this thing's got a serious HVAC.
Y'all need to
Yeah.
have to look at that police department. We're ready
Yeah,
to
so,
ask questions.
what if I can tell y'all that if we do this, we don't have to replace the new stuff?
Better not have.
Yeah.
How's that HVAC at your current facility there, Chief?
I'll tell you what, it'd be a full-time job for them, just on that. Mayor, council, Aaron doesn't necessarily need, introduction. However, we appreciate y'all, in looking at this, and, Aaron and his team's work to get to this point. I think we're gonna look to, get some input from you tonight concerning, a little bit of direction as far as exterior facade and some issues like that. So with that, I'll turn it over to Aaron to give you, an update to the point that we're at, currently. So, thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Mr. Mayor, council members, I'm excited to be here today to go through this with you. There we go. There we go. All right. So the presentation I have today is really to give you an update of where we're at with this. We've done several things since I was last in front of you. We have programmed the building. We've gone on tours. We have a conceptual layout to go over with you and a conceptual site plan. And then the second part of the presentation is what Zach was speaking towards, is really looking at the architectural style. And what we're doing is really starting the conversation today to make sure that when we come back and present concepts to you from an architectural perspective, we're on the right track with materials, forms, what you're looking for. So I know that, this is going to be one of the newer municipal buildings for Sherman, and we want to make sure that we're going in the right direction. And then the last item I have is just a project timeline to give you an understanding, an idea of where we're at and where we're going. So to start off with the facility organization. Oh, I went too far. So as part of the beginning of the project, we took several tours of local facilities around here. We went to College Station, to Prosper, Richardson, Waxahachie, and DFW facilities. Now, not all of these facilities are the same size as we're anticipating, but all these facilities are rather new facilities. So we wanted to take a look at what was happening with police design in today's standards, what new facilities we're doing. And really, when you're talking about a police facility, there's really three main components. There's the main building, which houses many of the departments. There's an annex building, which traditionally houses equipment, and then there's secured parking. Those are the three components that we know we have to deal with, have within this project. And based on the tours that we looked at and in discussions with staff and the different departments, we looked at how best to lay out the facility for Sherman. So in a traditional facility, in most of the facilities we saw, you have a main facility that includes your main functions: administration, criminal investigations, locker rooms, meeting rooms, break rooms, records, evidence, dispatch. You have all those components in that main building, and really the annex is just housing of vehicles and equipment storage. The one lesson learned from College Station, they approached their project a little bit differently, and we are taking that idea and applying it to ours. And what they did is they took some of the components that you would traditionally find in the main facility and transferred them to the annex. Now, why did they do this? Well, there's efficiencies in putting these items out into the annex facility, because an annex facility, the way we're proposing it, it wouldn't cost quite as much as the main facility. So the annex facility is typically located within the secure parking area, and we could start to utilize like a pre-engineered metal building for that to really reduce the cost of the square footage. So really we're just trying to be as efficient as we can. And when we started looking at this and going over it with staff, we saw that there were some functional advantages to putting these other components out into the annex facility. So the concepts you're going to see, I'm really going to go over two things. I'm going to go over the main facility and the annex facility. In the annex facility, for what we're talking about today and presenting, we do have equipment storage and vehicle processing, which you would traditionally find in an annex facility, but we also have a SWAT ready room, special investigations, and a training room area within that. The site itself. As you are familiar, this is at West Travis and Northgate. The site is a prominent site, a very good site. We do know that we are going to be located in the northeast corner of the site. The reason for that is for the PD, we really need 2 access points for patrol to leave the facility from either Northgate or West Travis. So that really puts us on that quadrant. On that quadrant, as you will see, the darker shaded is the higher portion of the site, and it starts to slope really towards the corner of Northgate and West Travis. The site itself has about 20 feet of fall on it. So taking that into account, our site layout really tiers the facility from that high area down. So when you're looking at the site plan at the corner of West Travis and Northgate, we have a curved public parking area, and then the larger yellow block you see is our main facility. And then as we move basically down the page, you get to the annex. Now what we're doing to account for that 20 feet of fall is, if I'm standing at the corner of West Travis and Northgate, the public parking is about 5 feet above me. Then the main facility is about 5 feet above that. I have a parking area that's directly adjacent to the main facility right behind it that's at that same level. And then I move up about another 5 feet to get to the annex. So we're really tiering along with the site grading that we have. We know we're going to have to do grading on this site, but we're trying to take advantage of the natural tier system that's there. This also has a strategic advantage for the police department, and that is you never want to create a situation to where somebody can drive up and basically drive into the facility or ram it. So by putting that parking 5 feet below our main facility and putting a retaining wall in, we have the ability to prevent any vehicles from basically driving up and hitting the facility. So we're using that natural grading to our advantage. And then the red line that you see, the red dashed line that you guys see that extends from the main facility around, that would be the secure parking area. And you do see that we have the main parking for it, and then we have some green space or areas which we know could be either future expansion of the facility or future expansion of the parking. So the area that we're taking up, the overall site is 10 acres. The area we're taking up is a little over 7, about 7.2 acres, leaving some additional land for the city to utilize for future use.
Is that the existing grade, or is that the grade after all of the dirt that was put there?
That's the grade after all the dirt that was put there. Yeah. And we understand that we might have to move some of that off our site, just to get our grading to work a little bit better. But sort of at the high point of our site was that, from the detention area that was brought over to our site. Main facility itself, the main facility is about 27,000 square feet. The public entry is on the bottom of the page as you enter in, and then we have training, chief suite, evidence, dispatch, and then you see sort of a corridor that separates the bottom half from the top half. That's that main circulation corridor for the body of staff. And then the upper part of it is CID and patrol. There's sort of a natural reason that we oriented the building this way, and that is CID and patrol are really the two areas of growth for the facility. Now we've pre-programmed into the concept that you're seeing today basically the ability to double staff. So we didn't look at it from a time perspective, but we looked at it from how can we double staff? We have staff right now. If we can make this facility double that over time, we feel like that's going to have a lasting effect. And then we also know that the two areas that might grow would be patrol and CID, knowing that we can extend the building out to this level. So that just gives you the basic overview of why it was laid out the way it was. Whoop. So the lobby itself, you come in, and another lesson that we learned from looking at these different facilities is many of them that we went into, they had two entrance points. They had an entrance point that either went to evidence pickup, or an entrance point that was after hours that went to dispatch. Or like in the case of Richardson, you went into the lobby and you went down a long corridor to get to the evidence. That was one of the things when we went on the tour that we didn't like so much, and we think we have a solution that technology allows us to have this lobby work and not have this separate entrance. So there's one entrance into the building, and you will see a vestibule. That vestibule can be secured. So after hours, when the second set of doors are locked, somebody can still come into the building, hit a panic button, the door's locked, they're safe. Immediately that goes to dispatch. Dispatch has a camera, they see them, they can intercom and talk to them. So after hours, we've really created a situation where this is still a safe harbor and somebody can come into the facility, but we don't necessarily have to have them go into a separate entrance to get to dispatch. What that enabled us to do was then have a smaller lobby, have one entrance point into the building, and off this lobby, you'll see basically as you walk straight in, there's a glass front like you're seeing at Richardson, where we would have staff on normal hours. And this lobby is secure in the sense that if I walk into the facility, the only places I can get are to the window or counter in front of me, to the public restrooms, and to the training room itself. The training room is located on this side so that it can have a dual use. It can be used by staff as well as for public use. The training room itself, this is about double the size of the training room that is already in the PD. This will allow for bigger groups to utilize the space. And one of the lessons we learned from the picture you're seeing is Waxahachie is to really get the multi-purpose out of the room. They put a lot of these glass marker boards that you see throughout the walls in here, and they really utilize that room for an awful lot of different aspects. All the facilities that we went in had a large storage area, which we have off of ours, so they can take the tables and chairs out, they can reconfigure the room, really make it more multi-purpose. Moving to the other side of the lobby, we have our evidence storage. So if I'm a citizen and I come in and I want to pick up a piece of evidence and it's available, I have the ability to basically go into a vestibule, go up to a window, I can get my evidence, and then I can directly exit the building. So in this facility, what we're really trying to do is prevent what happens in the current facility, and that is the public can come in, kind of go anywhere. We're really trying to control them into that lobby space and either lead them to controlled access points. Next to the evidence is a small crime lab. This would obviously have the equipment necessary to process some evidence that comes into the facility. Next to that is then our dispatch center, and we have a large data room that works off of it. The dispatch that you're seeing, you see 4 white workstations. That would be current. That's what we would put in the facility day one. And then off to the left-hand side of that, you see 2 dashed in. That gives us the ability to do 6 in this type of type of linear configuration. The room is actually sized to where we can rework the workstations and fit 8. So once again, we have a situation where we're doubling the capacity of the facility. Moving then on up, we have a break room that's really off that main access corridor. Above that is the locker rooms. Currently, right now, there's about 44 in patrol. This locker room situation has 78 in the men's, and it has 16 in the women's. We looked at local police departments as well as the national statistics for men versus women, because when you're designing these facilities, we want to make sure we have that breakdown around correct. It's a about 15 to 20% male to female. So our breakdown of lockers is 15 to 20%. Overall, we have the ability to double that 44 over time to double the amount of patrol officers that we have that come into the space. And the lockers that we're projecting to put in there, not like the lockers that are in the current, these are oversized equipment lockers that give the patrolman the ability to put all their equipment within the locker itself. I keep jumping ahead, I apologize. Patrol, this would be one area where we have the report writing area, we have the blue room up above that has the 4 workstations in it, that's for the sergeants. We have 2 lieutenants and the assistant chief, as well as a briefing room. Patrols are really never going to get over about 16, that's probably the max. So our briefing room, even as the facility grows, that's going to be the appropriate size, because that's a shift that comes in and out of there. The patrol is then located directly adjacent to CID. CID, you're seeing 10 workstations in white, and then you see 5 below it for growth. Once again, this is very similar to dispatch in the sense that day 1, we're talking about utilizing 10, having the growth of 5, but over time, we actually have the ability to put in an additional 5. So we can get 20 in here. We would have to reconfigure, and some of them might have to reduce size, but that's a long-term solution that we need to take into account. Then to the left is the administration area, where we have offices as well as then a common conference room. Another lesson learned from Richardson, which we thought was an excellent idea, is you will see in this plan that we have some storage rooms. Those storage rooms are sized the size of a small office. They did it in Richardson knowing that if future growth, they could turn a storage room into an office. So we have sized all of our different storage rooms to enable that to happen. The annex facility itself. The annex, because we are putting more than just equipment in there, we'll go from left to right. On the left-hand side, we have a gym, then we have an armory and a meeting room. We have SIU, which has their workstations. And when we met with staff, this seemed to be one of those programmatic ideas of not only were we being efficient from a cost perspective by putting more items out in the annex, but from a functionality standpoint, it puts SIU in more secluded area where they can really be autonomous from the rest of the building, which is preferred. Off to the right of the SIU is a vehicle processing area. This is really a twofold space. It gives the PD the ability to process a vehicle that comes in from an evidentiary standpoint, but it also gives them a covered bay area where they can outfit their vehicles. Currently, right now, IT is really just sort of working outside in a car when they've got to fix something or outfit it with new equipment. This gives them an interior space to be able to handle that. Then you'll see a canine area and equipment storage all the way on the right-hand side, and then the upper portion, you have the meeting room, the SWAT ready room, and then various storage areas. These various storage areas, this is a cheaper way for us to put storage in. We tried to limit the storage that we had in the main facility and concentrate it out here where we knew the dollars per square foot were a little bit more reasonable. Do you guys have any questions on the plan before I jump ahead?
Tell me real quick, you said 78 lockers, male and 16 female.
Yes, sir.
94, so what is our current officers that we have? I was thinking we were around that.
No, so since we just took over animal services in October, we're at just over 100 employees altogether. So sworn capacity in patrolmen is about 40, just over 40. So our thought process going into this is at the end of the day, as we continue to grow, patrol gets the lockers. So we move in day 1, CID may be able to get a locker and use it because we have extra. We grow, they keep their stuff at their cubicle. We've talked about cubicle solutions that would allow for that, and patrol gets the lockers. So we have a baseline that basically Aaron's projection of double is we'd be able to double the amount of patrolmen that we have. And so right now, the statistics that we've been working off of that we have been living on in the city of Sherman is about 1.4 patrolmen or officers per 1,000. So, that gives us, of course, we can't speak to the amount of time that it's going to take for the city to grow, but we can speak to the number of people. And so it does allow us ultimately to grow about double. And we currently are functioning at about that 15% of female officer capacity, which is great compared to where we have been. We've really made strides in that area. So that locker room is one that that would be the thing that grows, right? So when we talk about that patrol would grow, that would be the thing that grew in it, because as officers come in and out to type reports or to be in a briefing, that's going to be very limited. They have the capacity to do a lot of those things in their vehicles, but it's the locker room that is so key. So one of the things that we've seen in today's society is that it is not officers don't want to wear their uniform to work. There's an inherent danger in that now, and that's unfortunate. But we don't have the capacity where we're at now for that to even be an option. So the locker room and the style and those things that go into it is part of it is just a product of the society that we're in today, and that's why at the basis of it, if we can double the amount of lockers that we have for patrol officers, then that's a win. Detectives can wear their plain clothes, but the patrolmen need to have that.
And that being said, the other thing I do want to mention is in that locker room itself, we did take into account sort of a secondary locker system. So we have, there we go. So right there's a set of smaller lockers and a set of smaller lockers. So they wouldn't be those full equipment lockers that you're seeing in the photo, but these would be more of a locker that you guys would typically see in a locker room. So it would still give the ability to have some additional staff have a locker in there that would be beyond patrol. So, those lockers are expensive and they're big and they're space eaters. So we want to be very efficient with how many we put in, but we've tried to accommodate various types of solutions as PD moves forward with their growth. Did anybody else have any questions? Okay, I will move on. So this is the point where really what we're trying to do is, when we're talking about establishing a vision, is we really just want to go over what we think our direction is and get your feedback from you guys to say, yes, we think you're going in the right direction, or no, we'd like you to look at this. At this point, we don't have a three-dimensional vision of exactly what this building is, but we want to go over what those elements that we think need to be in the architecture with the overall or overarching goal of creating something that's timeless. We don't want to walk away from this. We want to walk away from this knowing that Sherman has a building that they can be proud of for 50 years, 100 years. I mean, this PD is going to be around forever. So we want to make sure that it really has a timeless feel to it, and it's going to work and not look like, oh gosh, that was just done in 2021. We really want it to endure with time. So what we're talking about or looking at today is really municipal architecture, and what are those elements or key pieces, not only in a traditional style, but what we're seeing in current day, and what can we take from that and what should we use? So when we think of a municipal type of architecture, what are the things that we see in it? Well, on the upper left, you see symmetry. So you see the entry point, and then it's symmetrical off of that. Symmetry, traditionally in municipal architecture, was pretty strong. A defined entry, it being an element or a higher piece that defines, so when you walk up to the building, it is inherent, where you're going. Columns and arches were pretty traditional in municipal facilities, and then types of materials, masonry and stone. Those are typically what you see within a traditional style or traditional type of municipal facility. Current trends. So what are we seeing today? Well, we're starting to see more glass. There's a twofold reason for that. Obviously, glass has become much more efficient and the structural systems allow it. So we're seeing more glass. We're seeing more natural light coming into the facilities themselves. We start to see more angular roofs. We see a mix of materials. So maybe it's not just brick and stone, but we start to see metal panels or wood panels. We start to see some of these other types of materials integrated into municipal design, as well as then roof overhangs. So not only the roof overhangs, but the different levels of the roof that break up the building or the facility itself. So what are those timeless elements that we want to take away from all of this that we want to make sure we utilize? Well, proportions. So the building on the top left, it's kind of a nondescript building, and the reason I'm using it for this presentation is not to say that we want our building to look like this, but this is a brand new facility. But when I look at the rendering of it, it looks like it could have been done sort of at any time. And part of the reason for that is there's a good mix of glass and stone. There's that high point element in the middle that says that's where the entry goes, but it's in proportion to the rest of it. When I move to the right and I look at the materials, that is one of the facilities that we toured. That is Prosper's new facility, and they do have a mix of brick and stone. And then they utilized some wood paneling on the underside of their soffit system, but basically the majority of the building was a repetition of this brick and stone. Then we start to see natural light, going back to the addition of glass. So natural light has such an effect on all of us. And one of the lessons we did learn from some of these tours is many PDs have long corridors. And they're usually organized around those long corridors, which we have. One of the things that we want to try to do is in our long corridors somehow get some natural light within that, so that officers that are within the facility on a regular basis, they have the ability to not only see out and have some natural light that comes in, but get to experience, that natural light no matter where you're at within the facility. And then the rhythm of elements on the right-hand side. So this is a more modern-looking building, but it still uses that rhythm of elements. So it has those repetitive windows that you're seeing off to the side or off to the right. And then it has the mix of the materials. It has the stone and the brick. But that rhythm of those elements that repeat starts to make for more of a timeless or classic type of looking architecture. What do we see in Sherman? Well, the rhythm of elements. So in our downtown, the area that you see, there are those rhythm of elements. So you have those windows that are the same size that repeat again and again. And that really starts to make a timeless type of architecture by not having every window look different or seem different. But if you have these repetitive elements, not if it's just windows, but other aspects of the design, it really starts to make a more cohesive design. And then we see the brick and stone, obviously. If you just drive around the square downtown, most of those buildings are brick, but some of them have stone at the bottom portion. The courthouse is stone. So there's already brick and stone within the Sherman vernacular, and we would certainly think that we would be repeating that. And then down at the bottom, what are the newer facilities that are being done in Sherman? What are they utilizing? Well, we start to see some of those current trends that we talked about. So in the high school, there's clearly a vertical element that defines the entry. Now, are we talking about repeating that in ours? Clearly, we don't want to mimic this, but we want to take that idea of a vertical element to define the entry. And then on the right, the First National Bank, we see the roof overhangs, we see a mix of material, we see the glass. So, this just gives you sort of a broad brush of the elements that we're looking for or we're looking at to repeat within the facility as we start to develop the three-dimensional aspect of it. My big question is, are we on the right track? Do you want us to look at something else? We just want to make sure we sort of have a palette that we all have a comfort with moving forward. And with the idea knowing that when we come back on our next presentation, we will have some concepts to look at from a three-dimensional standpoint. Questions, comments?
I'll be crazy and say, I understand all the windows in the new facilities, but windows make me crazy when I think about the schools having so many windows, the banks having so many windows, the police department having so many windows as far as security goes.
So, you bring up a good point. And one of the things that we'll make sure we do is, I'm going to jump back to the plan because I can speak to that a little easier. One of the things we're doing is at the front of the building will require us to be hardened. And what I mean by that is we're going to have to utilize glass that's bullet resistant. Now, having the facility up higher than the road structure helps us. So we know we're not going to have somebody from a higher vantage point coming down. So what we'll most likely do is we'll have bullet resistant up to a certain level, and then we'll have regular glass above that. But we will be very strategic about the amount of glass that we put into that training room, and then the lobby itself, and then off to the chief's suite. And then we have a few windows in dispatch. So we want to let natural light in, but we're probably going to be more limited. You're not going to see these big expanses of glass there. It would be more limited so we could let some natural light in, but we still keep that security. So we want to be very strategic about that. Versus the backside of this, where we have CID and patrol, we think, or we're proposing that we would have a larger expanse of glass so that when you're in CID, if you're in those workstations, we get a lot of natural light that floods in and goes into that whole space, because CID is going to be one group that's going to be there on a more regular basis. So we're trying to be strategic about where we actually locate that glass, not only from a security standpoint, but who needs it and how should it work.
Shouldn't there overall be some continuity between, well, this building and then those that we built in the future? And the only most recent one, I guess, would be the fire station. I can't even picture that in my head right this minute. But I mean, don't you agree that there should be some?
I do.
You see that building, you say, well, that's a.
And I think
the city of Sherman.
I would agree. And I think that's one of the things that we want to make sure we're going to do here is we're going to put a palette together that you guys can utilize. I think the easiest way for us to do that, because buildings are going to have different shapes and forms as you guys move forward, depending upon what they are. But I think the materials really start to become key in repeating that. So there is a stone on the fire station that's there right off of Northgate Drive. I think we can complement that or use something that's very similar to that so that you start to get that campus feel of it and say, okay, yeah, that, when I see that stone, oh, those are City of Sherman types of facilities. So yes, I would agree. I think it makes sense to have a palette that gets used again and again.
And then as we build another fire station or a substation or something, then there's some
right
continuity.
Correct.
You haven't showed that, and maybe that was your original concept of the exterior that's been in the newspaper and those things. I mean, was that just a?
So that was done. That was done several years ago, and that was just a concept. I do not anticipate this facility looking quite like that. That had a red brick to it. I think based upon the fire station there that's at Northgate, I think there's a rough stone on there that I like to repeat. So I think we might try to utilize a brick that's maybe more complementary to that, and then use that rough stone. Would be the thought or idea.
Can we make sure that there's no windows where they can see the fire station? Because if they see a new fire truck over there, they come back and ask for stuff. That would be my one request. It hasn't worked out for us so far.
We can shelter that, sure.
Okay, thank you.
That's right.
But to answer your question, as far as the slides that you've come up with so far, to me, they're right on. Once we get together, you can kind of mesh them together. I think we're going to be right on.
Okay, good.
I mean, as far as the slides that you've shown so far, so.
And that's sort of our.
I've seen some I didn't like, and then I could see how we could mix some together and.
Sure. And that's our ultimate goal, is to really come up with something that everybody's comfortable with that can be sort of this working point moving forward for city facilities. Great.
So I know this is all the design and architectural design stuff. I'm kind of curious, and Chief, maybe this is a question for you. It seems we've added some space, not necessarily very much with the main building, only a couple thousand square feet, but adding that annex building. Is there something that's changed in our operationals or something that's creating that necessary need for the annex there? I'm not saying it's a bad idea. I'm just curious with the design showing that now. That's kind of a new concept.
So Well, like Aaron spoke about, an annex is something that you typically have, and historically it is for vehicle storage, and really a lot of times that's about it, right? So we're soon to buy an armored vehicle for our special response team, and that'll need a place to be parked. And then to follow that, we would purchase a command vehicle, which would need a place to be parked. So one of the things that we learned in visiting these other places is that they continued to build facilities based on what they currently did. And what they currently did, what their current operations, they simply made those to fit what they were at, right? And that's how we are now. So if we bought a $200,000 armored vehicle, we park that sucker out in the conditions and the elements and let it weather, because that's all we have. But given the opportunity here, we can store it. There are also elements in here that would be in the normal, that we currently already do, that would be in the normal regular building, but they don't have to be. So we tried to take a philosophy of what has to be in the normal building, which is going to cost more per square foot.
Right.
If it doesn't have to be in there, can we put that in an annex at a lower cost? So part of the annex is simply an avenue to reduce the cost of the facility. So what would happen if we reduce the scope of the annex to just the storage? You would see the square footage of this building go up at a exponentially larger cost. And so we were simply trying to just limit that. And again, assess our operations and say, okay, and I think, again, that's something College Station did very well. It wasn't novel thinking on our part, but it was theirs. And we thought that was a really good idea for them to get more out of their project. And so that was kind of our thinking in here. So he was talking about SIU in there. So that's the Special Investigations Units. That's what you would historically think of as the narcotics officers. They are not typically seen by the public. They're not typically having those relationships with the public. And the people that they interact with, they're not the ones that you want to be leading through the hallways of your police department, honestly, or that you want coming through the front lobby when you're there with your children. So it gives us a place that they don't have to be in that main facility, and they can safely do some of their covert work and still maintain the integrity of what they're doing.
Well, Chief, to that end, by oversizing an annex, we're paying less money per square foot. We could also better future-proof the facility because we're not paying as much because it's,
That's exactly.
No, that's absolutely right. That's allowing us to do more there. No, you're absolutely right.
So I guess the concept is from the original 24,000 square foot plan we had, there's just this idea that that was going to build it to what we have now versus the 34,000 feet that we're going to build on this plan is just giving us more space and parceling some of that out for a cheaper cost.
Absolutely. And y'all are well aware of how building a facility goes. We've been extremely conscientious of each meeting. We've had pretty much weekly meetings with Aaron, and there have been times where we added on a lot of square footage. And we're like, man, how did this happen? But what you're seeing here in Councilman Steele, to your point, right, we had this rendering before, and it was kind of just this could be that. This is the defined structure. And so whatever we come back to you with those other elements would simply be just the architecture point that this would fit in. Gotcha. And so as we started doing that and doing some of the math to get us, I think, to the lifespan of the facility that we would look for to accomplish the goal of what we set out to do, we did end up adding some square footage. So then we started to explore the options that could get us a more cost-effective way to do that. And that's why the annex, we've looked and talked at costs, and we think we could have the potential to come in at a much more cost-effective range that we'd be looking for there. And so, to Councilor Stevenson's point, allowing us to better do for the future in the main facility that we'd look for.
Awesome. Does this concept allow for any expansion?
Yes.
What you could bump out of
It does. So looking at the plan right now, anything going up, so above CID, above patrol, above admin, as well as then the locker room going out to the right, there's all area on the site for growth. And we strategically did that knowing that those are going to really be the only areas that would grow. So, anything on that main corridor down, those aren't ever going to grow. In fact, like evidence, we're sizing that knowing that over time we're going to be reducing the amount of evidence that we have. So we don't anticipate anything down growing, but we anticipate the elements up top being able to grow. And there is room on the site for them to grow.
And my direction to them, by the way, in the times that we've met is, let's not try to put a number on, well, how many years does this give us? In theory, if we're doubling the size of our police force, that should be proportionate to the size of our city, right? So if our city doubles in size, population-wise, then this should be enough to cover doubling our city, right? So what I would say is, 80 to 100,000 population is what could be served by this facility under roof as it is now, with room to expand in the ways that he's just described. So is that going to be 5 years or 10 or 20? I don't know how many years it's going to be, but it doubles our capacity in terms of officers and growth of the city. So I think that's a pretty good, if you're looking for bang for your buck, I don't want to be doing this again on my watch, and you guys probably won't be here, when we are doubled in size from what we are today. So that was kind of the goal that we set out, and that the marching orders that they took in terms of determining the size.
Well, I'm very happy with the concept. Thank you very much.
You bet. The one last item, and I'll do it quickly, is just to give you a timeline so you know when we will be back and kind of where we're at on the project. Or does that go too far? So right now we're in the conceptual design. In an upcoming meeting, we will have the CMAR approval. We've gone through the process of selecting a construction manager at risk. Once they're on board, then they can start helping us with the constructability, pricing of all these items. We'll start working through how all that works with the concepts that we have. We will come back in March with the schematic design. At that point in time, we will have some three-dimensional renderings for you guys to review and look at, make sure we're all going in the right direction. Then our next step is design development, with the idea that at the budget workshop, we would work with the construction manager at risk to have a pricing package that would basically say, here's the concept, here's what it looks like, here's the materials, and this is what it's going to cost. And at that point, you guys can give us approval to move forward with it. If we do, then we finish off our drawings. The contractor then puts it out for public bid to his subcontractors and comes back with a guaranteed maximum price. At that point in time, council gets the opportunity to approve that guaranteed maximum price, and then construction starts. In talking with the CMAR that has been identified as being the proposed, they're thinking we're somewhere in the 14 to 15 month range. So if they started in October of 2021, that would put us moving in sometime in January 2023. Thank you.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Next item, receive presentation from City Manager Robbie Hefton regarding potential debt issuance. Robbie?
Okay. I'm going to try to fly through this to really get your direction on a couple of things. So I believe we have an opportunity to take advantage of what right now is historically low borrowing rates. And we've got some projects like the police department headquarters that we know are right here on our doorstep in terms of being ready for construction and whatnot. So this issue came to my mind in talking with our financial advisor, Gary Kimball and Mary, just about what rates are right now, and we'll go through that in just a second. But what I'd like is from you all is just discussion about your thoughts about timing of that, and then, you know, what sorts of projects might we consider for this. And so most of this front section is just kind of reminders. You can take it with you, you know, impress your friends and family at parties about, you know, about some of these facts. So when we talk about debt capacity, we're talking about our ability as a city to afford issuing debt. And for projects like the police department, we don't have $13 or $15 million sitting around. We would have to bond this debt and or borrow for this debt in some fashion. Well, how do we afford that? It's really tax supported debts, which means it relates to property taxes. So our debt capacity is really a function of our property tax revenues that we generate, and that is a function of both the rate and the base. Right now, our rate is 49 cents rounded. It's 48.9, but so 49 cents. Our tax base is about 3.85 billion. So that multiply those things together, 49 cents, 3.85, we get our budget for total estimated tax revenue, property tax revenue. Other things that figure into debt capacity is the actual debt service cost, which is simply a function of how much you're borrowing, for how long, and at what rate. So other little fun facts here are at our current rates for the interest and sinking, that's the debt rate, how much does it take in value to generate the ability to pay for $1 million in debt? And it is, and I've run through some different scenarios here, and I'll email this to you tonight or tomorrow. We've had some junior and the rest of the actual IT crew have been working. I don't know who all, it's probably all hands on deck, but Sean and the whole team have been working on our email. And so I didn't have email to be able to send this to you ahead of time until just today, and just didn't get it done today. So I'll send these slides to you. But you can see the rates here and the values that it would take of new value coming on the rolls to support $1 million in debt. And it ranges anywhere from, 35 to 41 million, and down to 7 or 8 million if you consider the fact that we have some situations like in reinvestment zones where we are supplementing our revenue with county revenue. Just also a reminder of the rates and how they work. This is just our basic rates, debt, and our maintenance and operation rate. The second one is in reinvestment zones, we split that pie slightly differently. The 15 cents you'll see is our debt rate, interest and sinking. That doesn't change from slide to slide. Oops. What does change is how we divide the M&O rate. And so in reinvestment zones, we carve out a piece of that to do things just within the reinvestment zone, like in reinvestment zone number 5. So of that 49 cent rate, 15 cents is debt, 8.5 is M&O, and then the rest stays in the TERS, so long as the TERS exists. You'll notice that the size of the pie grows from this slide, which is really just the city's portion of our rate, 49 cents, to the next slide, which is 73 cents. So this is the city's portion and the county's portion together. So the red is still the same, the green is still the same, the light blue is still the same, but we've added 24 cents of debt capacity in TERS number 5 through using TERS as a mechanism to finance things. So right now, our debt, the debt cost in the market is somewhere around 2%. 2%. Actually, the most recent examples were 1-point-something percent, 1.8, 1.9% of cities our size, according to our financial advisor. So 20-year cost of debt, 25-year cost of debt is about $50,000 to $60,000 a year per million. Our tax notes, remember our shorter term debt, they're a maximum of 7 years and they're less than 1% as the current rate. So other things that are noteworthy. So our last bonded debt was in 2019. It was a $19.1 million issue at 3.07% for 25 years. Annual cost is about $1.1 million. We used it for streets and parks, basically. Current rate environment is about 2%. And we believe that, hey, is this on still, Junior?
I can hear you, Robbie.
Oh, really? Okay. I don't need it. The current rate is about 2%. So what are rates going to do going forward? Nobody knows fully, but there are indications, and the market is building in that rates are going to increase. We don't know exactly when, we don't know exactly how much, but because of our change in leadership at the national level, we would expect spending to increase, federal spending. Federal spending increases inflation. Inflation increases rates that we borrow at. So there's every reason to believe that rates are going to go up and not down. We just don't know how quickly or how much. So if we use today's rates versus just a year and a half ago, if we were to issue this same $19.1 million, we would save $3.3 million on that issue over time, which equates to $2.5 million in extra projects, because the 3.3 is interest costs. That would allow you to borrow 2.5 and then have $800,000 in interest costs on that 2.5 million. So millions of dollars of benefit in rate, just in the rate environment today. Oops. And this is just simply a Wall Street Journal article that I wasn't looking for. It just happened to be on the front page of the Wall Street Journal last week that talked about those factors that I just acknowledged. We've also had similar discussion with Gary Kimmel, our financial advisor, about the forward-looking, aspect of rates. In terms of our taxable value, remember I said our debt capacity is a function of what our values are and what our rates are. So assuming that our rates don't change, assuming our tax rate stays the same, what you have to look at then is, well, what is our additional capacity for debt based on values? If the rates stay the same, the only way you increase your debt capacity is through values. So this is a projection of just the things that we know about. Okay, this isn't projects that are not yet on the radar, but I took a swag at projected values on both value increases, which remember are capped by state law, now at 3.5% overall for our total tax base, and then new values added through development. So this chart really starts at 3.85 billion. That is left the same through this entire, 7-year period. And then it's grown by value increases and new values added. So you can see that we go from 3.8 something million to 6 point something billion over this next few years. What does that mean in terms of our debt capacity then? Again, just on new value, we're not taking any of the existing value as our ability to pay for new projects. We're saying just on new value alone, what does this mean for our ability to borrow? So there's two numbers here, really. There's our interest and sinking rate, which is 15 cents. So at 15 cents over the next however many years, this increase in value at the end of that would be, I should have worn my glasses, 70 or 80, between 70 and 80 million in new projects. That's if we use only our interest and sinking rate. If we use our total tax rate, which is our 49 cents, then it grows to 250 million in increased capacity. Now, so where I'm leading with this is, if we were to do a $20 million bond issue, that's just a round number. I don't have a list of projects right now today, but I hope to get your direction on this as we move forward. When is it in our growth, our projected growth of tax base, would this $20 million bond issue be covered? Is it 10 years down the road, 5, 7? So what you see from these, depending on which line you want to use, at most conservative, it's somewhere in the 23 to 24, fiscal year 23, fiscal year 24 timeframe. If you use, well, what about just total tax increment, then it's sometime next year. So, in terms of our upcoming needs, we just heard from one report on that, and we're saying, there's another slide on it here, that the police headquarters, bricks and mortar, and furniture, fixtures, equipment is going to be somewhere in the $15 million range, $13 to $15 million range. We know we have some other major roads and infrastructure that are coming down the pipeline. One of which we've already talked about in our planned development that's going on the south end of town. One we heard about tonight, which he started to give you an idea about how quickly these things may be coming online. So we know that there's going to be demand in the major planned developments. And then there are some other things that we've talked about in the past at past budget workshops that we'll talk about again this year. Parks, trails, and other facilities like future funding of Fire Station number 6. Those are examples. Okay. So as it relates to what we know is right here on our front door, as Aaron just mentioned, we will be ready for construction sometime in fiscal year 2022, which begins in October of this year, of 2021. Estimated cost up to $15 million at this point. At 2019 rates, we would incur about $6.7 million of interest at this $15 million. At today's rates, we would incur about $4.2 million, which is a savings of $2.5 million over our last bonded issue. So that's one point. Second point is, well, what if we don't do it right now? What if we wait for 6 months to decide to do it? That's fine. I mean, we can wait 6 months. Every 50 basis points, so a basis point is 1/100%. So 50 basis points is 1/2 of 1%. So if rates move from 2% to 2.5%, that cost us $1.1 million in additional debt service. Other opportunities that we can look at that don't relate to necessarily bonded debt, but it's something I would like your input on, is TERS. TERS number 7, which is our Bel Air TERS. Remember that we are planning to use the land that we have there as a kitty for building part of the infrastructure there. We believe firmly that the more time that passes, the more valuable that land will be. So I'm just going to move away from the microphone here. So the question is, do we wait for some period of time? I don't know what that period of time is, 12 months, 18 months, 24 months, for vertical development to start happening so that the land value goes up, so that we have greater ability to pay without, greater ability to pay with money that's in hand. So started to look at, well, what is the cost of us deciding to do that? We would most likely issue tax notes to do something like that if we wanted to wait. And remember, the tax note rate is less than 1%. So our cost of borrowing through tax notes, our interest cost in borrowing is somewhere in the $10,000 to $15,000 a year. So my question to be posed is, should we spend $10,000 to $15,000 a year to gain $1 million, $2 million and a half, whatever the number is, for that value of that land increase? Now, the reason I'm bringing it up, you might say, why are you bringing it up? Because it seems so elementary. Well, we talked about not borrowing on this. Okay, so I wanted to bring the idea to you because we said, well, I don't really want to borrow, particularly on the first phase of this, until it gets started. And so that is different than we talked about, and I don't mind you guys saying, no, let's wait. But I wanted to express this in terms of cost and benefit of us taking an approach like this for us to have a discussion about. Risks of issuing debt now versus sometime later. If we're going to issue debt, the cost over 20 years is going to be, rates aside, it's going to be the same, whether you start it now and go 20 years, or whether you start it in a year and go 20 years. Because debt service on the same 20, again, rates unchanged, is really a matter of when do we start paying? And we start incurring costs a little sooner, but the cost is of no change, assuming no change in rates. So there's not really a risk of issuing early, unless we weren't going to issue the debt in the first place. Okay, so if we make a decision to issue debt today, and it ends up we're not going to use that in the future, that's not a good plan, right? So we need to be sure about the debt that we would issue before we go and commit to issuing it. There's also a small risk. Well, what if rates go down a little bit? Well, yes, there's always that risk that rates are going to go down. I'll propose to you, if you told me over a 20-year period that I could be guaranteed a rate of 2% on our borrowing, I would say I'll take it if we know that we're going to be borrowing. So while there is a risk that rates decline, the disparity is low, in my opinion. So how do we mitigate that? Make sure that whenever we issue debt, that we're sure about what we need it for and that there are known needs. Interest rates don't have much room to decrease. If they decrease the same amount in the next 18 months as they have the past 18, our borrowing rate would be somewhere for a 25-year debt would be somewhere less than 1%. That's just not even feasible to think that would happen. So, and then the last point is what I just made. There's not really a risk of issuing it sooner than we need because there's no extra cost, assuming rates don't change. We just incur the cost sooner. So, what I need your direction from is, what do you guys think about the concept of issuing debt sooner than we would be discussing? We would be discussing this normally at the budget workshop in June, but I believe there's a window here. Are rates going to go up 5 basis points in the next 6 months, or are they going to go up 50 or 100? I don't know. I believe they're going to go up some. They've already started to go up some. They're still very low. And even if they go up 50 basis points, 2.5% is better than the 3.07%. So, you know, you might say, well, let's just wait. But I do like the idea of probably getting good if we know that we're going to be spending the money anyway on projects. So, question is, are we going to issue debt in the near future? And if so, when and for how much? And then kind of side note, is this TERS number 7 opportunity? So I'd like to hear your thoughts about that.
I don't like the idea of getting ourselves in debt, getting the cart before the horse. What we talked about on that south area was absolutely no debt, that they show us they're going to do something before we put money into it.
Yeah,
this to me, and this tells me right here, we're ready to move forward, and we haven't seen anything yet from them.
Not the same.
Well, that's
That's
TERS
7.
7 is is Bel Air.
It is.
Well, is the property gonna increase more in value over the interest that we would pay in issuing tax bonds? And I think the answer is yes, it will. So, I mean, and as far as it comes to issuing the debt, Janet Yellen said today that rates are gonna go up, and we know construction costs are gonna go up. And if it doesn't cost us more to borrow when it's cheap to borrow, I think we would be doing the citizens a disservice by waiting for rates to rise for money that we can basically hold on to punishment free. I think we're pretty committed as a council to moving forward with this project when it comes to the police department and other projects. We can borrow the money cheaper now and sit on it.
We need to know exactly what our projects are.
Well, I mean, we're gonna have to issue debt next year if we don't issue it now, and our interest rate's gonna go up. And I guess Robbie's asking us, is saying, hey, I bet rates are gonna go up, and we'll save ourselves a few $1 million if we borrow now, rather than waiting 6 months or a year. Is that it in a nutshell, Robbie?
Yeah, that gets it. And so to Sandra's, so you're both actually correct. What Sandra's point is making is, before we commit to issuing debt, I want to know what it's for.
Absolutely.
So we would come back, if you guys give me the, hey, yeah, we've got an appetite for this.
We're not issuing debt tonight.
We're not issuing debt tonight. I'm asking, do you have an appetite to issue it sooner than we thought? And if so, then we'll come back next meeting and say, here's our list, here's our best estimate for the amounts, and it's gonna be the things that I've just talked about.
Right.
It's police station, and it's some roads. Maybe it's a few park things thrown in there, we don't know yet, but if you guys told me, hey, go jump in a lake, we won't bring back the report in 2 weeks. If you say, yeah, looks interesting, bring us back a report and list, we'll bring that back in 2 weeks, and then you can decide, okay, based on what we heard 2 weeks ago and based on what I've seen tonight, either move forward or let's wait.
Yeah, and in 2 weeks, you'll know how the interest is gonna go, because tomorrow may change a lot of things.
Yeah, I mean.
That's scary.
Yeah, I mean, it would be scary to think how much they could go up in 2 weeks, but they could go up. We're not gonna have significantly different view, I don't think, in 2 weeks. And if we do, then there's nothing, I'm not asking you to approve it tonight, so there's nothing we can do tonight.
Yeah.
I'm asking, I'm hearing from some that you'd be interested in having a list of projects that it would relate to. I know you like the idea of saving money and issuing debt if we're going to do it anyway, when rates are as low as they can be.
Right.
So
We're all about saving tax dollars.
all about saving the tax dollars, and we're talking about property tax dollars here, not sales tax dollars, not water and sewer revenue, not anything else. Property tax dollars that fund revenue, that fund bonds, the revenue of which funds bonds. Unless you tell me otherwise, and I'm seeing some head nods, we will bring back at next meeting, the first meeting in February, a list of projected projects. The PD will be on that, and there will be some other things, roads and other things, with some estimates of, what we could possibly be using those dollars for. That's on the first part of that. Second part is the TERS thing. Is there an appetite to do that or not?
So Robbie, I think that the money for the TERS is low cost, but I think the only talking point that I would have on that is that, we kind of had an arrangement of we aren't going to do anything until we sell this property. And so that was going to be, if we don't sell the property, we're not moving forwards. But what we'd be saying now is the expectation that we are going to sell this property at a higher rate, and we don't know what that is until we sell it.
Right.
So, to move forward with the project before we sell the land and not know what value we're going to get on that, I think could be premature. So.
Sure. Yeah, I get that. And I understand both. That's exactly why I brought it to you. It's not what we talked about. And so I wouldn't want to move in a direction that's different than we talked about. But I did feel it incumbent to say, hey, based on where rates are today, there's an opportunity here, and I don't mind, pushing on that. If what you're saying is don't want to consider TERS number 7 right now, let's get 3 months down the road or budget time. And, I think they'll be moving dirt out there before our budget workshop.
That'd be great.
In which case we'll have a,
Different perspective.
different perspective. But as we see things start to materialize out there, Ryan thinks they're going to be moving dirt very quickly too, and I believe them as well. And so,
how much property do we own next to that one?
I don't know, but I bet they would sell.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, I think that we had originally, if I remember correctly, we didn't want to be greedy in our ownership of that land. And
yeah, we wanted a fair market price, but I don't think we're not necessarily in the business of making a big profit, and so. Well, here's the, let me. We're heading to, I think that was kind of our original commitment, to sell that land. Yeah. And if we could get another $1 million or $1.5 million for it in a year or 18 months, but is that the business we're in? Yeah, I don't know. My business is, if we sell the land for more than we were going to sell it for, and we're building roads with it, then we're saving taxpayer money. The question is, at what cost, right? Because we're not going to hold it forever. Same with the land by the high school. We're not holding that land forever, but it has increased in value with the high school now being there, West Travis being built, 1417 developing. So I have a high confidence that if building continues to occur, that the values of the land will go up. By how much? Not sure. When? Not sure. But just wanted to bring it to you for discussion. So what I'm hearing is, let's not bring anything back on TERS number 7 in 2 weeks, but maybe, bring back a list.
Can we ask, I know that, I believe they're like you, that they're going to move sooner than we think on this TERS number 7, and I don't want to miss out on the opportunity to save money, whether it be by issuing debt in order to do the roads and that type of thing. You're probably in contact with him pretty often.
Yes.
And that type of thing. And I'm concerned that we might let an opportunity get by where we could save some money.
Yeah.
As far as our taxpayers on what it's going to cost us. And what if nobody buys, yes, somebody's going to buy that land, but what if they don't buy it soon? What if we, in order to pay for the road, we can't sell that land as quickly as we hope we can? Then, we've got a bit of a problem there.
I think that was kind of the arrangement, was we wouldn't move forward with our construction unless we sold the land. Yeah. So we're kind of like, at that point, we don't sell the land and we don't build a road for Bel Air.
Well, it was really, we don't start until they start. Right. And then our ability to start is tied to the land.
Land, right.
And so we would be selling the land, really close to where the time it's we're going to be writing checks for moving dirt and stuff. So.
And Robbie, I think if you came back with the PD on its own kind of agenda on this long-term budget, I think all of us would probably have a different discussion on that and be good.
Sure.
I think that, the other 6 million of projects that Sandra wants to know what those isolated down to are, I think that's probably what we all want to know. I also think it's noteworthy to say that, this year is a strange year. Yes. And we were contemplating not being able to give raises at the same level as normal. And although we try to separate the two pots of money, they both conflict with each other. And, it's interesting, the debt service on 20 million comes out exactly to the COLA raise for our staff. And so I don't want to get into a position this coming year where we're trying to debate on whether or not we can give a COLA raise because we've issued debt and can't afford to pay it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, sure. Those are fair comments. Our actual financial status is much better now than we projected 9 months ago, because 9 months ago we didn't know what the heck was going to happen in terms of shutdowns or the impacts. We ended up the year financially better than we projected and slightly better than budget from a revenue standpoint. I would have taken the bet 100 times out of 100 that we would not end up where we did looking forward 9 months ago. But we have, and so we have a little bit of better feeling about impact. Now, what's going to happen tomorrow or next month or next year. I don't know. But we ended up better, which gives me a little bit more confidence to say, we're not coming to you saying, hey, I think we're going to see a slowdown in building permits because they've risen, or in tax revenues because it's risen, or in sales tax revenue because they've risen. So, but I did feel like I had to at least bring, hey, there's an opportunity here. If the least you do is consider the police department, that's $2.5 million in savings. Absolutely. If the most you do is police department plus some other stuff, that just, the cap is whatever you're willing to spend that we know is going to be spent on these projects. So we'll bring back a list next time, and then you guys can give us direction on yes, no, timing, and all that stuff. And then I won't bring it back. I'm hearing a little bit of, I need a little bit more clarification on the TERS number 7 stuff, because I'm hearing here, no, let's let that lie. I'm hearing over here, hey, we may have some opportunities I don't want to miss. So if I could get a little bit more clarity.
Well, the idea that we borrow money for TERS 7, it doesn't relieve the developer of the obligations to meet his milestones. I mean, it doesn't. We don't hand the money over anyway. We make sure that he doesn't get the money until he performs.
No, it's really an issue of how does it get funded, and we move only when he's like literally we move dirt as he's moving dirt, and so the question more is how does it get funded? Because he doesn't care. He may not even know where our money sources are or what we're trending to use. It's just that internally we've talked, hey, this is going to be our funding source for it. We don't want to go out on a limb, start issuing debt on things that we don't know are going to happen. So let's just use this little pot of money over here from the land sale and a few other pieces to start doing our stuff. So,
well, and to Willie's point, if you're talking about just a purely financial decision, I think this is a pretty easy one. But I think we need to have a conversation about, are we in the land speculation business because, we come across it and we interact with it so much. And if we're doing all this work to make, new developments and make property values go up and create it all, should the citizens of Sherman who put their money up, who paid for that land because it's their land, should they be smart investors with their land? Or should we say, hey, we're not in the land business? And, we've talked about this a bunch over the last couple of years. And, I think it's something that we need to, in budget time when we're sitting down, have a discussion about it and try to come up with some sort of, clear way of thinking about it, because it seems like we always go around in the same circle. From a financial standpoint, if this was my buddy who owned this land next to this development, I'd say, man, don't sell this land now. That's crazy. It's going to be worth a lot more money in a few years. But as a city, as a municipality, and it's the people's money that we're playing with, what's the right thing to do? And I don't think we've ever come to a real clear consensus about it. And it's definitely not a conversation for tonight, but it needs to be a conversation.
Yeah, agreed.
Well, I'm just concerned that, we're counting on this land selling, and maybe he starts turning dirt, which means we need to start on roads, at that time. And if the land hasn't sold, now we may have to,
Well, I don't have.
And I mean, we're just trying to look at a crystal ball and try and figure the future out.
I have zero concern. To me, I have 0% concern that the land won't sell. The issue is how much,
Okay.
Because we could hawk it today and get low
Yes.
dollar. And so, I think what I'm going to do, unless I hear from you differently, is TERS number 7 will come back as development continues to occur. It won't come back in 2 weeks. And then if in a month's time, the developer is saying, hey, we got our engineered plans back, we're putting together, we've got our concrete guy ready and our, whatever, then I'll come back to you and say, hey, here's where it is, and, you want anything different? So. Okay, so next time, a list of projects with some estimated dollar amounts.
Yep.
And then you guys can give us direction after that.
Sounds great.
Okay, and we will have a very short executive session, by the way. Very short.
Shorter than the
so-
time it takes to read the executive.
No, I got a new one. So, okay, media questions. None? Okay. Council comments, we want to do council comments tonight? Go ahead, Joe.
I don't have any comments,
No
Mr. Mayor,
comment.
for the
Nope.
sake of time.
No comments tonight? Okay, executive session. I'm going to skip the announcements. City Council will now hold a closed executive session pursuant to the Texas Open Meetings Act at Section 551.071 to consult with the city attorney, at Section 551.072 to deliberate the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property, and at Section 551.087 to deliberate regarding economic development negotiations. So at 7:30, we'll recess into executive session.
Did he say 7:30?
Yeah. Robbie told me this was a fast meeting. Fast executive. Oh, yeah.
That thing reminds me of those people that call you and say, I can save you
Yes.
$2 a month.
That's it. That's what I was whispering to
Send me
Willie.
your bill.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, Willie. How's my boy doing in school? Good?
Well, we start tomorrow.
Okay. I keep forgetting about it.
He's, we moved him back out there, so he's.
Oh, okay.
So you think he'll learn his lesson? I hope he's learning well.
Oh, yeah. It'll numb that a little bit more. Yeah, that'll be tough. The other thing doing is like that, like that. Anyways, I better get back here. Mike, I'll catch up with you afterwards.
I don't. I've got to go into executive session.
I just was talking to Terry, and she said that you were concerned about something with legals or whatnot. It's still being done, it's just through corporate. Okay.
Yes, we are.